You're back on Note to Self, and my guest today, I'm very excited, has probably got a few notes to self up his sleeve, up his very nice vest, because he always wears a lot of suits. It is, of course, Dr. Stuart from Village Medical Practice. Good morning to you. Hello.
Good morning.
I really appreciate you coming on and having a chat to me. You do actually wear a lot of suits,
I do.
so that is something.
Usually only one at a time, though.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's a good probably way to get dressed in the
I've
morning.
been criticised in the past for doing different.
To wearing more suits?
Wearing
Or not?
multiple at a time, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad you've changed your ways. That's probably a great note to self that you've
Yeah.
learnt.
That's the reason I'm here, to share
Yeah.
that information.
Yeah, good. Put it on a post-it note. No, but you are here for lots of other reasons because you are a general practitioner.
Yep.
You've got a wealth of knowledge in medicine, obviously. You have your own practice in, I'm going to forget the suburb.
Harrisdale.
Thank you very much. In
You've only
Perth.
been here a few times, so that's
I
okay.
know. Perth, Western Australia. And I tell you what, it's a pretty revolutionary and very cool general
Revolutionary?
practice. Yes.
You mean revolutionary?
Yes, revolutionary practice because it's very warm and inviting and friendly. But before you got to the place where you were setting up your own practice and doing so many cool things in the health space, you actually started your journey in IT.
I did, yeah.
Which is very weird. How did you go from IT to GP?
Wasn't challenging enough, It's fixing computers is pretty straightforward. You can just reboot them. It's not so easy with a human.
Yeah.
There is a bit of a story there. I didn't do well at school, which is what everybody wants to hear the doctor say.
Yeah.
But I didn't do well at school because I didn't turn up in school the first time around. I probably attended about 40% of the classes, got a bit of a C average. I managed to scrape through despite the fact that I was never there. And so scraped into a degree in IT because I was really interested in computers. In fact, it was all I was interested in when I was in my teens. And it says something about me, but anyway. I did an IT degree, or at least I tried. And I think it was recognised. A few of my lecturers pointed out that your heart's not really in this, and largely that was because I had done so much of my own learning at home on my own computers, and it was kind of a repeat. It was kind of boring. It was kind of difficult to stick in at it when actually I just wanted to go off and do my own thing and write my own programs and understand it better. And one of my computer applications lecturer actually pulled me to one side and said, "Look, your heart's not in this. Here's a company in America which is hiring programmers. Why don't you send them your email, your CV?" So I did on a Friday at about 5-6 o'clock, and I got an email back about an hour later saying, "Come to Glasgow Airport tomorrow." This was in Scotland. And they did an interview in the airport terminal, and Tuesday morning I was on a plane to New York, and I worked over there for a year. Had a great time. It was wonderful. And kind of parlayed a career for 4 or 5 years out of that one job, and realised that wasn't actually what I wanted to do. And then took a step back, grew a goatee, didn't...
Great.
And have never revisited that, not intentionally. Facial hair and me are just not
aligned.
Good bedfellows. And ultimately I went on a journey of discovery, I guess you would call it. But I booked a flight into San Francisco, and I booked a flight out of Miami a year later, and I kind of backpacked across America, met a whole bunch of people, and decided when I came back, I kind of want to do medicine. And I don't really know where it came from, other than I had just spent a lot of time reflecting. And went and spent some time with some doctors and thought, yeah, I really like this. This seems pretty cool. You can inject people with stuff, and you can see people's hearts appearing on a screen, and all kinds of cool things that I saw just spending some time with cardiologists and GPs and other people. And then it was game on, and I had to go back and essentially do the equivalent of year 12 again, and had to study 5 subjects, and I had to ace them all, which was a bit of a challenge. One of them was computing, so that was it. That was okay.
It's good.
But physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, I sat them all in 1 year. My head was spinning, and got my entry qualifications, got offered a couple of universities, and met my wife on day one of the medical school course, and the rest is history. So it was a bit of an adjustment and a bit of a change, but best decision I ever made.
I mean, there's so much in this. We've got already, career change as you go on later in life, which is a big thing that I think people come up with, especially now in the 30s and 40s. People are changing careers all the time. But
Absolutely.
the other thing that is worth noting is obviously you were a GP overseas and then you've moved to Australia, but then there's another hurdle to practice here in Australia. Can you tell me about that journey to practice here?
So that sort of evolved towards the end of our medical school and our training. Was that in the UK, the National Health Service, the public provider of health, was a challenge to work for, and we had a young family, and we were quite keen to just explore other places. We felt like the opportunities available to us in the UK were pretty limited, and we thought that spreading our wings would be quite an exciting thing. And our kids were young; they were still very young at the time, either pre-primary or just around that age. And so it made it easier for us to just jump on a plane and head somewhere. So we had some contacts in Australia, so we headed over here. Was the ultimate decision after, it has to be said, quite a few years of consideration and reflection. And found Australia, found Perth, and just thought, well, this will do.
Yeah, great.
No, we loved it. We fell in love with the place straight away, and were welcomed with open arms. And certainly, practicing in Australia was very satisfying and very enjoyable. And we just haven't looked back.
Is there any sort of additional study or qualifications you've got to do to bridge the gap, or because of our relationship with the UK, could you just practice medicine here?
In between. So we didn't have to study for anything particularly, but you have to jump through quite a number of hurdles. I was certainly left with the impression that you got to want it to move, even with a friendly relationship and a reciprocal relationship like Australia and the UK have. Your qualifications are essentially taken as read, but everybody wants $500 at every opportunity to confirm that you are qualified, and that you have to pay for every single step of the way. So I just remember feeling really downhearted because there was two of us, both of us GPs, and every time we had to do something, it was $500 for this, $500 for this each. So it got a bit draining after a while, but after months and months and months of lots and lots and lots of $500, we finally were able to come across and register with APRA, and then our qualifications were essentially agreed upon with the Royal Australian Colleges and whatnot. So it was an expensive and timeful process, but fortunately we didn't have to study, which is the important thing.
Okay. Yeah, because then I suppose some countries, if you are coming from different places, you do have to resit some qualifications. Is that right?
There will be some people. It just depends on individual countries and their relationship with Australia and whether or not they feel that the qualification is essentially compatible. I think there aren't many countries out there who have medical degrees that aren't recognised, but I think there is still that process to go through. And for some people, it's harder. For some, it's easier. I think, to be fair, I think we probably had a relatively easy process compared to many.
Yeah.
But it did still feel quite onerous, and it did feel quite bureaucratic for a lot of the time. But, we wanted it, and we're very happy that we did it.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned your wife there as well. And I mean, she's not here to speak up for herself, so
we can pick on her.
No. But I just wanted to touch on her journey as well briefly, because I know she studied dentistry, and then she decided to study again and become a doctor. Or add GP onto that wealth of knowledge as well. Talk to me about that journey, I suppose, mainly from your perspective, because I'm speaking to you. But what was that like to support her in that? Because I suppose there's many women that would like to be very career driven and have these bigger aspirations, but to do a double huge degree in health is massive, and there may not be an environment where that can be facilitated. Do you have sort of thoughts or what was that journey like for you?
So you're absolutely right. She had done dentistry before she decided to do medicine. And the reason she wanted to do both was because she was going to be a maxillofacial surgeon they require dual qualification, super duper smart people. Pretty much all of them have honours degrees in everything they've ever done, and they've written a bunch of papers and all these kind of things. And she's that smart. And she actually threatened to do veterinary at one stage, which would have been another 5 years. That was where I drew the line and threatened divorce. Unfortunately, she backed down. So But she, I think she would have absolutely flourished as a surgeon. But I think the realities of life were for us that we wanted to have a family, and unfortunately, there are sacrifices. And it wasn't that it needed to be, she sacrificed and I not. I'd have been quite happy to be
Yeah.
the stay-at-home dad. But actually, neither one of us really wanted either of us to do that, to quite that degree of sacrifice, given the amount that we had given at that point in order to get to where we were with our careers. But it made more sense for us to be GPs, where we could be more career contained in some respects. Max-Fac surgeons in particular, but any kind of surgical specialty, you really do have to super specialize. You really do need to invest a huge amount of time. You need to do a lot of research, by which I mean a lot of research papers. It's just a huge, huge commitment. And while I have no doubt she would have flourished, I think the reality would have been it would have been very difficult to do that plus have a family. And so that was the natural conclusion. And I'm sure there are days where she thinks, yeah, that would have been a nice outcome, but we love our family, we love our life here, and we love the job that we do. And we can, to some degree, we can actually have a bit of the best of both worlds. I mean, I do minor surgery here. We've got an operating theatre. We can do small procedures, as does she. So we have to some degree the best of both worlds.
Yeah. What do you think is some of your secrets or your notes to self in the world of being a good partner in a career that is so driven and time consuming? Like, how have you facilitated having a healthy family, relationships? There's a lot to navigate there, and now obviously you've got your own practice and all that entails. What are the sort of key takeaways that you have that you're like, if you had written them all on post-it notes for us to all glean from, can we have some of them, please?
Of course. Not sure the value, but certainly.
Yeah.
We started our relationship by talking about not fighting face to face, but fighting back to back. About being there to defend each other rather than attack each other, to recognize that actually what probably corrupts and upsets lots of relationships is actually when you start fighting with each other rather than attacking the external forces that are impacting on the relationship. And so from that perspective, we've always recognized that you need to be defensive and protective of the relationship. We try and do, we're terrible at it, but we try and do date night once a week and, have a cup of tea or a drink. It doesn't need to necessarily be going out, especially when you've got young kids. We try to just make that time to make sure we're sitting and having a conversation. And it doesn't really matter what you're having the conversation about. It's just having the conversation. And the way I often describe it is that when two people are walking a parallel path and they stop communicating, then 1 degree of course change, and before you know it, you're miles apart. Is a very subtle thing, and then you realize and you bring yourself back together again, and then you walk again. But before long, if you're not communicating, that 1 degree of separation will start to kick in, and before you know it, again you're drifting apart, and you have to bring it back together. So it doesn't matter what we talk about if we're having date night. It doesn't matter whether it's the kids, whether it's something that's actually really worrying us, whether it's something business related, whether it's about us personally. Doesn't matter. The important thing is that we're communicating and that we're staying on the same tram lines, if you like, and that we're walking side by side rather than drifting apart.
Do you feel like you end up talking about stuff like this with your patients? Are you serving more and more as psychologists and giving them relationships advice too?
Massively. I mean, I'm sort of in the middle of my day here today, so I've already seen a few hours of patients this morning. I've got another hour or so to come after this, and yeah, I've had this conversation with, not specifically this conversation, but I've been supporting a couple of my patients today already with just long conversations just about life, just about stuff. A lot of people don't have that in their life, or they don't know where to access it. And sometimes it's just about personal experience or having another person to listen to you and say, well, actually, have you thought about it this way?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty special like that, and I know many of the doctors at your practice operate the same way, where there's a lot of heart and time for people, which unfortunately seems harder to come across especially if you need bulk bill and you're just trying to get through people or whatever. I don't know
Bulk
what the
bill, what's
pressures are.
that? I haven't heard of that in a number of years now.
No. I don't think it's applicable in many places anymore. But
There's not many, but unfortunately, and I mean, you're touching on a point, but it's probably worth mentioning that you get what you pay for, and unfortunately, we decided that instead of trying to churn patients through and not give them that time to be able to have that communication, we let the patients choose how much time they want, and we tell them how much that costs, and they vote with their feet. And it feels like we're at the far end of a stampede heading toward us, because we've been, battering the door with patients. We're up to 12 GPs here in a little over a year. A year and 1 month we've been open. So it's clearly successful. It's clearly a strategy that other people do appreciate as well. But yeah, it unfortunately costs more money than the government wants to pay for it.
Yeah, it's a revolutionary idea, isn't it? That caring
Free coffee.
GPs. Oh, free coffee. That's what it really is. All comes down to.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you've been having conversations with some of your patients already, and they are sort of ongoing. But what are some of the tips and, well, maybe not tips is the wrong word, but the gold nuggets, more notes to self? I'm trying to glean as much as I can from you that you wish people knew in terms of their health, their well-being. Maybe it is mental health or just well-being. Like, is there one caveat that you're like, come on, just drink water or something?
Well, yeah, drinking water is good for your kidneys, but it's not going to do massive amounts for your mental health.
Yeah.
Unless you're an alcoholic, in which case drink water, not alcohol. But anyway, communication is probably the biggest, the one word I could encapsulate. It's something that people feel challenged by, particularly men. They often, probably the most common phrase men will open the conversation with me with is by saying, I don't know what to say. And that's great. That tells me everything I need to know at that moment in time. And I can just say, well, there's the door's right there. Just bugger off. No, it's a great opener, because I say, well, look, that's fine, but why are you here? What's going on? Just talk me through it. Who made you come? Because that's often the big secret is actually, well, the wife told me that she wasn't going to talk to me anymore unless I came and talked to you, so I'm taking a box, and that's fine. Let's just explore what your wife's worried about, and then we can try and figure out what's actually broken here, and then we can go from there. So yeah, communication is a big challenge, and I think a lot of people, it really does get buried under the carpet. A lot of I like the pressure cooking analogy for anxiety and depression. That eventually a pressure cooker will explode. I like that, but actually I prefer the burying it under the rug, sweeping it under the rug, because if somebody asks you to sweep the rug, and you can't really be bothered, so you wait till they're not looking and then you sweep it under the rug, you're probably going to get away with it, and that's quite satisfying, because you got away with it once. If you asked again, I'll do that again. That worked really well. And so you keep doing it. And over weeks and months and years, if we keep just sweeping things under the rug, we'll keep them hidden. People probably won't notice for a while. But eventually your rug's going to start levitating. It's going to start, there's going to be little landfalls. Yeah. And you're going to have to quickly deal with it before somebody notices. And eventually, of course, somebody's going to notice, and your life's falling apart. What's going on here? This is a mess. What's happened here? And you're going to have to start slowly peeling it away and start dealing with it scoop by scoop. I think that's quite a good analogy for what a lot of people do with their mental health. They just bury it, they hide it, they pretend it's not an issue, and they crack on. Mums will cater for their kids before they cater for themselves. I use the, when you get on a plane, and for those of us who have been on a bunch of planes in our life, who've had the privilege of flying a lot, you kind of get a bit jaded when the hostess or steward, forgive me, a more politically correct term, stand up and they'll tell you all they'll go through the safety briefing. But there's one bit always catches my attention, which is when the oxygen masks fall from the ceiling. Always apply your own mask before you put masks on children and young people beside you. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward, but people don't often consider it, and it's not highlighted enough, in my opinion. But that's because at altitude, you're not going to last very long, a matter of seconds, if there's a cabin depressurization, which means if you pass out because the cabin has depressurized in the space of seconds, nobody's there to put the mask on to your children or to frail people or others around you who perhaps can't do that. And it's the age-old story that I see parents or people coming in and saying, "Oh, I know I've put my own health last, and I haven't dealt with this, but we've just had to prioritize, and the kids have been sick, and my husband's been off work, and there's been this and this." And yeah, I see that and I understand that, but the reality is they all need you to be strong. And if you're not strong, everything falls apart. And that's really what we see sometimes is a whole family falls to pieces because the one person who was the glue forgot to put on their oxygen mask.
Yeah, it's a really good reminder. And I suppose my next question then is, how do you go at putting on your own oxygen mask,
I'm a
Stuart?
tough guy, I don't need that.
Oh, no, none of that deflection.
We're really well trained, first of all, in how to deal with, because there is a lot psychologically that you have to deal with. We have some really horrible stories, and we have some patients who obviously have some terrible diagnoses, and you see the worst and the best of humanity in many ways. So we're well trained in how to manage our emotions and our feelings, but ultimately we have a number of outlets that are available to us. Here we have, well, I certainly have my wife, and I think the fact that we went through training together, the fact that we went through all of those experiences, we understood what each other was going through, which can be really difficult for a relationship where there's a medical and a non-medical, because there are huge demands. It's a very unreasonable lifestyle. Sometimes you can plan on an 8 till 6 day, but if your last patient walks in a 15-minute appointment, sits down and just bursts into tears, you ain't getting out in 15 minutes unless you're completely heartless, which of course we're not. So the reality is you just have to be flexible around these things. And some days either your planned concert just doesn't happen because you just had to deal with that patient at the end of the day. And the fact that we have that shared experience means we can understand and support each other and not be grumpy that the other one didn't make it or whatever.
Yeah.
We're also big on supporting each other as colleagues. So all my colleagues know they can come and bash my door down. There's a big scary note on that door just now saying that's off limits.
Yeah,
but
great.
99% of the time, they know they can come and chat to me, and frequently will come and offload, and I'll do the same if I feel the need. We have a bunch of staff, we have a bunch of supportive people around us who help us to carry the weight sometimes that we have to carry, and sometimes I'll just go through and sit with my nurses, and I'll just sit there and I'll just say, life's just not fair. And we'll offload to each other and we'll talk about it. And it's just really cathartic and helpful. And then you can move on. We are in the process of organising something called a Balance group here. We have a psychologist who works with us, and we're going to ask her to, or we have asked her to coordinate this group. So essentially once a month we'll meet all the GPs and the nursing team with the psychologist, and we'll just be able to offload about difficult cases or challenges that we're facing, ethical dilemmas, all these kind of things. And those types of avenues for support for us are really critical, because it does allow us to then apply that oxygen mask and be ready for our patients. On a day-to-day, we do something called housekeeping, which does not involve sweeping the rug, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it is allowing, so every patient's different. That's one of the things I love about general practice. Somebody can be in for a pill. The next one's a kid in for a vaccine. The next one's an 80-year-old who's got cancer. The next one is somebody who's, going through anxiety. The next one could be anything else. And, the vast majority of those are quite straightforward. You deal with the problem, they leave, you quickly type up some notes, and then you bring in your next patient. Some of them are really harrowing. Some of them are really difficult. Some of them are incredibly unfair. Patients who you're trying to keep alive for a certain period of time because they have a wedding or a birthday, or there are a number of things. And sometimes it's really cruel and it's difficult, and you have to just take a minute. And that's what we talk about with housekeeping. If you have to take a break between two patients and just clear your head, because in the way I was trained, and I think I was really well trained, every patient deserves the time that they have allocated to them, and they deserve you to be 100% there for them, because they might just be coming in to tell you something really mundane or benign, or ask you to look at a little mole or something, but they need you to be on your game so that you don't miss something that could potentially cause a problem. And so you've got to give yourself that time to clear your head, make sure you're satisfied that you've moved on, and then bring that person in and give them the time that they deserve as well.
Are you happy with the state of medical care in Australia? This is a big loaded question, but it
Yeah,
just
happy with it.
well, the reason I ask is because you're talking about something that I feel like everyone expects from GPs,
Mm,
but doesn't seem to be enough to go around because not all of them, for whatever reason, have the capacity, the time. They're feeling, stretched. Or if you then look in regional Australia, we've got the situation where if you've got a doctor in a town, then the people in that town go, oh, well, I'll just knock on their door at 9 p.m.
yeah,
and just ask doctor, so then you've
yeah.
got other things happening there. So in
Well,
that framework,
for
do you
what it's
think
worth,
it's
I get
okay?
text messages at 9 p.m. from patients, so
Yeah,
that's
okay.
that's
Yeah,
equally
similar.
challenging, but far away from the problems that we face in rural Australia, which are very different and a real challenge and a very different challenge to the metropolitan areas. I think our I think our healthcare is second to none. I think we do have phenomenally good quality care, and I think the standard of care that I'm expected to provide, quite rightly expected to provide, is very high.
Mm.
So I'm satisfied that the quality of care is really good. Availability is a challenge. There are many reasons for that. It's very difficult to, and the government over successive governments have tried very hard to convince doctors to relocate to rural communities with varying degrees of no success to some extent, and that reflects the challenge. It's a very difficult job. You probably feel quite under resourced and under supported in some of those environments. A very satisfying job without question, but a very difficult job, and so it's harder for patients, for doctors, sorry, to want to relocate to some of those locations. In terms of access in the metro areas, it tends to be a lot better. It's still not great in some areas. Certainly, some deprived areas are really struggling and will probably continue to struggle as the movement away from bulk billing progresses. There have been some attempts to redress the balance, but unfortunately, the reality is that bulk billing is no longer covering to any even close to the extent that we would need it to in order to pay the bills. It's
Mm.
just that straightforward. You can't afford to run a practice and bulk bill and do all the things. Something has to give. So you either need to reduce the number of staff, support staff that you have on board, you reduce the number of nurses, or you reduce the quality of care and you cram in far more appointments than the time would necessarily allow. There are always things that have to give in order to make it happen. It's a struggle even in a fully private billing practice to make ends
Mm.
meet at times because there are so many demands on general practice. There are so many hoops that we have to jump through, so many things that we have to get right. So it's a very difficult industry in general to navigate. And I think I'm satisfied that the quality of care that people receive is good. But availability is definitely still patchy and is always going to be a challenge, I suspect.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose the one other medical question that I really want to lead you into is a big one because there's a term that's been thrown around on social media a little bit. It used to be not so much talked about, and now all of a sudden it's a hot topic. I'm talking about perimenopause.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't
Should have
know,
heard of that somewhere.
you
Yeah.
should, yeah, it might be familiar. I don't know if it's just because of my age demographic that I'm getting all of these reels and photos and podcasts, whatever. But it
I would
seems
think
all
you
of a
would start to
sudden,
see that less, before you were in your 60s, Leah.
yeah, you would think so.
Yeah.
But but I'm just curious to touch on perimenopause because it is coming up, and the things that I see as well is that like, are these your symptoms and you're in your late 30s, early 40s? Well, it's probably perimenopause, and I
Hmm.
don't know if that's. I mean, I'm already a bit of a hypochondriac. We know that, so I don't need these things in my mind. So I wanted to just briefly touch on perimenopause. Should we all be panicking if we're in our 30s? Are we? Does it start then?
Oh,
Because
yeah, it's
someone said
game
it
over.
goes.
Yeah,
Oh
sure.
no.
Hang your ovaries up and you're done.
Someone said that it goes for 10, 15 years. So if you're actually in menopause at 50, you could start perimenopause at 38.
Do you know, in Scotland, when I was a young man, very
Mm.
many years ago, thank you, just to cut you off before you
Yeah,
make the obvious
sure.
joke, you used to get the TB vaccine in your mid-teens. And everybody in the years above would tell you how horrific a vaccine it
Mm.
was, how painful. They used this needle that was this long, it was this thick, and it just stab you with it, and it was so, my arm was twice the size, and I was sore for days, and it was horrendous. And I hear kids talking about the HPV vaccine, which we give around the same age in Australia, and with the same kind of tones. It's almost this rite of passage that the people who go before sort of stir up the people, they were so worried about it. So they decided, I'm going to stir up that, yeah. Look, for some women, don't get me wrong, perimenopause is a dreadful time. They have a really awful time with it. And more, we are understanding that. We are identifying that. There are specialist clinics. We run one here with a couple of our GPs who've been specially trained. There are specialist clinics for perimenopause. But for the vast majority of women, it's not as bad as it's painted. There's a real phenomenon when you go through medical school where, and I sort of fell into the trap a little bit myself, and I see medical students not infrequently with a similar thing, where my first rotation through a clinical department was dermatology. And every patient you saw had melanomas and horrible skin cancers. And I started looking at the moles on the back of my hand thinking, oh, like, look at that. And then the next, a month later, we were in cardiology. And I've got my stethoscope on, listening to my heart going, that's a murmur. I don't... Not happy. My heart's a bit fast. Blood pressure's high. Then it was hematology, and then every blood cancer known to man. And it was somewhere halfway through renal medicine that I decided I couldn't possibly have all these diseases. No. And you realise that actually it's a bit of an echo chamber, that the only people you're going to see in a cardiology clinic are people who have cardiac problems. And that's because they've been sieved out by GPs. And actually the ones who are really sick, the ones who are okay, we can manage in GP land. And the really sick ones are going to go to a cardiology clinic. And similarly, a dermatology clinic, 99% of dermatology is done by GPs. The rest go to a dermatology clinic. So what you see in a hospital is a real microcosm. It's a fraction of a percent of the actual population. So we see these echo chambers occurring all over the place, particularly on the internet, with regards to medical conditions such as perimenopause. Now, look, I think there is really, really good intent here, because some women have been blighted for many years and given wrong diagnoses before we finally got to the point where they realised, actually, this is probably menopause, and therefore we had some understanding. But for every one woman who's really struggling, I'd say there are many more who actually glide through menopause without really any significant issues, and who don't feel they need any medication, perhaps don't even have any symptoms. Hard to believe as that is. They are out there, because I meet them regularly. So the reality is it's better recognised now. It would be unusual. It is relatively rare to see women going through menopause naturally under the age of 40. Certainly we can induce it with surgery and with other medicines and things, chemotherapies and other things that can trigger it. But in general, it's unusual under 40, and we would actually investigate that more specifically to try and find out why that was happening. But I think it's good that we're talking about it. It's good that news is out there. I just think it's a little bit scary sometimes to think that, oh my goodness, I'm doomed to have 10 or 15 years of just night sweats and horrible mood swings and all the other things that go with it. So I think there's an awareness which is really good, but I think it's something we're also getting better and better at identifying. And as I say, these specialist clinics that are springing up now are incredibly helpful for women, because we have actually some really good medications and other support structures to help identify these problems. And to help us to figure out how we best deal with them.
Well, that's good then. I don't have to panic that I'm going into perimenopause myself.
No, you're well through that.
So that's fine. Look, we are almost out of time, but I would love to just glean one last thing. If there's anything, as we've been chatting today, that you feel like, is a great note to self that I feel like Leah could really need, because I need lots of help. You know that, Dr. Stuart. So is there any final notes to self you'd like to pass on? Help me on my journey. I feel like your face says you wanted to say things that you shouldn't say.
No, this is an empty brain face that we've got
great.
Going on here.
It's new. It's different.
A change is not necessarily something to be afraid of. That's certainly something I've learned throughout my life. I've done things, and my wife and I both would say we've done things almost in spite of, rather than, we've not always chosen the the easy path. In fact, in many cases, we actually deliberately chose the more challenging path. It is certainly one thing to say you're going to do the difficult thing. It's a very different thing to then do the difficult thing. And the only comfort you get in that is knowing that you went into it with your eyes open.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty difficult. But change is actually something that has been quite refreshing for us in various stages throughout our life. And it's often something that's resisted and that people are naturally afraid of. You don't need to be. It's not actually as terrifying as it seems. And sometimes it can be the breath of fresh air that you want. So I would say embrace change.
That's a great note to self to end with. Well done. You can
Dug
get
it
yourself
out
a
of
good
somewhere.
star. I was going to say, you can give yourself a duck. Just to finish as well, we should note that you have so many ducks in you just see,
over there.
There we go. There's one. Yes, yeah, the ones that. Oh, there you go. Just a few more.
It's the ones I give out to the kids and to select adults.
Yes, exactly. People at work always wondered where my duck came from. But the problem is we had a studio fire, Dr. Stuart, and my duck is no more.
That's horrific.
If you've got a spare duck, I'd love one.
Oh, I'm not going to sacrifice another duck. You're just going to no.
You just don't know what will happen, you know?
You're a duck murderer.
No, I didn't mean to. It was
okay, but you didn't go back and save my duck.
I'd left for the day. Oh, dear. Anyway, Dr. Stuart, always an absolute pleasure. If people want to find you, if they are in WA and they want to sign up for your ducks and your medical advice.
No duck murderers, though, please.
No, none of those. Can you give us some details of how we can get a hold of?
Sure. We're at the Village Medical Practice in Harrisdale, so you can find us online, have a look, pop down and say hello, and we'll give our patients have a free coffee when they come in, and you can sit and enjoy our lovely waiting room, which is a bit more of a living room than anything else.
It's very cosy. Can confirm some good couches. So thank you so much for joining me on Note to Self, Dr. Stuart.